Hey, thank you for joining us for another edition of 3Squares. We are thrilled you are here for the late July edition, and it's a good time to be with us. We've got a fantastic guest, and we're going to be foreshadowing a new series that we're going to be kicking off here in the coming months. So appreciate you making the time to be with us. I'm Charlie Arnott with the Center for Food Integrity and Look East. Our commitment is to help the food system be trusted and remain trustworthy, whether you're working in an individual company or across associations or across the entire food system. Glad to be with my co-hosts Susan Schwally and Kevin Ryan once again.
Hi, Susan Schwally. I have spent my career working with consumer packaged goods companies, understanding the consumer from IRI to NPD to Circana. And now I'm on my own working with startup research companies, helping them go to market and think about products for the marketplace.
And I'm Kevin Ryan with Malachite Strategy and Research, helping food companies, retailers at the front end of strategy and innovation.
Excellent. And we are so fortunate today. Well, I've got another very, very smart friend who's joining us. I'm not quite sure how I'm able to maintain all these smart friends, but Kate Graeff is with us. She's fantastic. Vice President of Enterprise Trust within Deloitte's Risk and Financial Advisory business. And as I was telling Susan before we started, I've spent 20 years working on trust. And when Kate first presented to me, it was a mic drop moment. I was just completely blown away. So in her role, she advises C-suite executives on opportunities to grow their business, drive loyalty and engagement, and protect their brands by building or rebuilding trust with their stakeholders, whether those stakeholders happen to be consumers, employees, business partners, regulators, or community members. Fantastic background in innovation, digital strategy, entrepreneurship. She has experience defining organizational strategy, shaping new offerings, and designing, developing, and scaling technology solutions for global adoption. She's worked in 20 countries around the world, takes a global point of view on the world's biggest challenges and opportunities. She holds a master's degree in international business from the Fletcher School at Tufts and dual degrees in diplomacy and French from Occidental College. And French is not her only language. She lives in the Boston area with her husband and 2 children. Kate, thanks for making a little time on Friday to join us.
And thanks for having me, Charlie. I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent. So we're going to jump right in because we have more questions than we're going to have time to answer. So we're going to jump right into the conversation. And again, if you are with us live and you have a question, don't hesitate to drop it into the Q&A. We'll do our best to get to those. And of course, you always have the opportunity to connect with us online later as well. So this is a fascinating time to have this conversation because trust is in short supply and seems more elusive perhaps than at any other time in recent history. So all the work that you have done, all the research that you've done, your experience, what's causing the erosion that we see currently in trust?
Yeah, that's a great question, Charlie. And you're right. It seems that trust is at a deficit in business and society. And before I get to the factors or sort of why it's important, I want to give you just a couple of data points just to articulate sort of how severe this trust deficit appears to be across industries, irrespective of where you look. We've done a number of studies over the last couple of years and have found that in the consumer industry, for example, only about 30% of consumers trust most of the brands that they buy or use. That's quite a startling number. Similar patterns in the technology industry, where 40% of customers trust tech brands to display competence and intent. But the one that really struck me when I saw it was in healthcare, because the very few industries prioritize trust as much as healthcare and the impact that has on us as individuals, but only 15% of nurses trust their leadership team. So regardless of the industry where you look, the perspective, trust appears to be at a deficit. And there are a number of factors that are contributing to this trend, right? First and foremost, we have growing customer and workforce scrutiny on the impact that business has on people and planet. We have digital transformation with all of the rising concerns around data use, privacy, ethical use of technology. Economic and geopolitical uncertainty, of course, is a contributing factor because it can exacerbate that sense of polarization and distrust. And if you look at the food industry in particular, there's growing concerns around chemicals found in packaging, artificial ingredients and additives, right? Everything from red dye number 3 to brominated vegetable oil. And so the question becomes, can we trust the food that we consume, and what impact is it having on us as people? So the reason that it's so important to pay attention to these trends is because trust ultimately influences behavior, right? It determines whether customers buy or recommend products. And so that trust deficit is a strategic issue, and that's why we're seeing a growing focus on it from C-suite executives.
So I'm going to do a quick follow-up on that. What role do you think the proliferation of channels for information plays in that, as people have the opportunity to kind of choose their own adventure in terms of where they're getting information?
Well, as with everything, there's positives and negatives, right? So there's a lot more information that's now available to us as consumers, which is healthy because everybody can go out and verify the information that exists. But there's also a proliferation in the number of participants in that ecosystem. And some of the participants do not always share information that is fully accurate, or in some cases, there's even attempts at fraud and misinformation. So it's just creating an urgency and a complexity in this environment for all of us to think critically and evaluate the information that we consume, the information that we produce, to determine whether we can trust, right, the choices that we're making.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned that with the issue growing, that more and more leadership is acknowledging that it's a big problem. Sometimes I've noticed, and this may be changing, that the C-suite, if they can't quantify it or make it tangible, it's hard to execute against it or stay committed to it. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, like, how do you help them make that tangible, and how do you communicate, the tangible value of trust?
Yeah, and that's one of the key first steps, right? Because trust can seem like an intangible human value, but it's one that has tangible business impact. And so what we found is that trust does help make organizations more successful. We've done a number of studies on this topic, and we found a number of measurable benefits. First and foremost, trusted organizations perform better financially. In fact, the data tells us they're up to 4 times more successful in terms of market value. Part of that has to do with customer loyalty. And what we see in the research is that customers who trust a brand are much more likely to buy again from that brand or buy almost exclusively. And a lot of organizations start from that vantage point. They start from the customer. There's also a workforce dimension to consider because trust is highly correlated with productivity, with stress. In fact, some studies even found that employees who trust their employer take fewer sick days, right? So all of that creates, the environment and the ecosystem in which the organization operates. There's also a resiliency and a brand protection element to consider as well. Organizations that are impacted by trust events can fall anywhere up to 74% of market value and market cap. And if you think about the food industry in particular, right, organizations that are impacted by recalls might lose customers either for a period of time, or those customers might abandon the brand altogether. So the question for executives is not why is trust important, but how do we define it and measure it for our business to understand how we're performing and where we can close the gap. We have defined trust at Deloitte as the outcome of high competence and positive intent. And that is underpinned by what we call the 4 factors of trust. In essence, it's demonstrating capability and reliability to deliver on your promises and to do it consistently, while also demonstrating humanity and transparency. So that's kind of the baseline definition. For the business, though, and if you think about the enterprise level, you need additional level of insight to understand where is trust being earned or lost. So we have developed the Enterprise Trust Framework. It covers 18 organizational domains, ranging from topics like customer experience, supply chain resilience, sustainability and climate, cybersecurity, and a number of other dimensions that can help to pinpoint exactly where the organization might need greater attention and greater focus. And that benchmarking and measurement helps to get there.
My question is, you kind of touched on it previously a little bit, but as you were talking about social media, but you see companies out there now that they almost seem like their business model is just to spread disinformation or misinformation, I suppose, and undermine the credibility of companies that you're talking about that are trying to build trust. So I'm curious of like what you and your colleagues, what advice do you give to companies when they have to go up against, it seems like people in companies that are trying to go the opposite way. What do you advise for them?
Yeah, I mean, with technology, there's so many possible uses and applications. And unfortunately, bad actors can exploit technological innovation for their own advantage by proliferating mis or disinformation, right? And we see that in cases like market manipulation, where criminals create fake social media accounts to disseminate information and achieve a certain outcome, or go as far as to perpetrate fraud, right? When they use artificial intelligence to create and generative AI to create deep fakes and then pair that with social engineering in order to convince somebody to do something they wouldn't otherwise do. And what's alarming and what we've seen is that a number of organizations have already reported deep fake attacks on their business, and some have suffered substantial losses as a result. So it's very important to pay attention to these topics proactively because otherwise it makes the organization vulnerable. Three things that organizations can do relate to people, process, and technology, right? From a people perspective, organizations have an opportunity to provide training and go as far as wargaming scenarios, right? Or simulations of what to do and how to respond to misinformation or deepfake oriented fraud, right? If you come across that in your day-to-day, what are the next steps that you would take? The second element has to do with process. We work with organizations to help them evaluate the guardrails they have today and determine where they might have vulnerabilities to mis or disinformation and how they might need to respond. And then the last element is technological. There are solutions on the market today that can help organizations to evaluate multimedial content, whether it's images, video, text, audio, and can actually flag deep fakes. So all of these different elements can form lines of defense for an organization to know that it's trusting in the information that it has and can make right strategic decisions as a result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Charlie, I think I saw a deep fake of you because it said that you like kale, and I immediately knew
that would definitely
knew
be
it was fake.
I immediately knew that wasn't you. So that's a flag. That's a flag right
absolutely.
There. That was a good catch.
It's not actual food, so we know that to be true.
Yes.
So let's just not even have the.
Well, you have to massage it, but Kevin, but Charlie's not willing to do that.
No, I'm not going to massage a vegetable. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. Yeah. So, Kate, I mean, what you're talking about feels incredibly complex and seems very complex. So, if I'm thinking about the concept of trust, and I'm in the C-suite, and I know it's a big challenge for me, but I don't even know where to start. Right? I mean, it's just like you said before. It can be a very challenging concept to make concrete, to make operational. It just feels vague and something that would be maybe nice, but I don't know what to do with it. So how do you think about operationalizing that using the enterprise trust framework or other tools? And how do you make that case compelling to a CEO who may be skeptical, kind of coming into this is like, I don't know. I mean, this doesn't really sound like it's anything that's going to be important in my business. And even if it is, I don't think it's anything we can act against.
Yeah, well, and first of all, Charlie, you're not alone. We hear that reaction and response from a lot of executives.
Not just about kale. You're talking about kale?
Not just about
Okay,
kale.
good.
Although I think, some might appreciate kale more than others.
Yeah.
I think there is that question of what do you do on this topic, right? Everybody recognizes that it's important, but how do you make it actionable, tangible, and real? And when we ask executives, right, what are you doing on this topic? A lot of them tell us, yes, we intend to make it a priority. Yes, we intend to lead with trust, but they don't know the right next steps to take. So some of that starts with defining what trust means for the organization. Mm-hmm. We have seen a number of companies start to develop their own trust charters that define their values, their principles, how they will behave as an organization, and clarify who owns this very important topic. In fact, if you look at the technology industry, and this is a trend primarily from tech, although it's starting to permeate other industries too, organizations are starting to establish the role of the chief trust officer, who's responsible for looking at this topic and for coordinating initiatives across the C-suite. So we see trust and safety functions, we see chief trust officers, that is on the rise. So part of it is, what does trust mean for the organization? The second element is around measurement, right? Understanding where the organization stands today, where its strengths, gaps, and more importantly, how it's doing relative to industry peers. There are many different ways to evaluate trust. Deloitte has a Trust IQ capability that helps us to get quite granular across those 18 domains that I mentioned and over 100 different activities. But that helps an organization to uncover the tactical steps that it might need to do to remediate the gaps. And I'll give you one example. We worked with an organization to evaluate trust and ingested social media signals. As a result of that, they found blind spots that they had no idea existed. They saw growing concerns around counterfeiting from their customers. And so that was something that they had to address as an urgent priority. And they saw supply chain vulnerabilities in a particular area. So it just helps you to be proactive. The last element has to do with technology enablement to take the right steps, to do it in the right way, and to do it with a degree of transparency. Several organizations are looking at establishing a trust center. In fact, a number of them have it already. Many more are looking at establishing one. And what trust centers do is help to coordinate all of those stakeholders to execute the compliance workflows, the review workflows, and have a degree of transparency around where they are in the process, the dashboards around how they're doing and how they're performing. Today, a lot of that effort is done through email, through spreadsheets. It's incredibly manual. It's incredibly lengthy, right? So digitizing that process and putting it in a trust center helps the organization to be much more effective and much more speedy. So I would say definition, measurement, and then trust center would be some of the key places to start.
So how do you make it? Go ahead, Kevin. I've got a follow up as well.
Yeah, a really quick follow up. You mentioned about measuring trust comparative to competitive set. At least I think that's what you said. I'm curious if you recommend beyond competitive set. So like just thinking about it from the food industry, comparing yourself to how trustworthy you are compared to someone sitting next to you on the shelf. Are you also should look cross category? Are you looking? Do you recommend that type of breadth of trustworthiness when you're doing competitive or comparative trust?
Kevin, I think that's a great question because it's important to understand not only how the organization is doing in absolute terms, but then to evaluate across a set number of peers.
Right.
When we do trust measurement, we tend to benchmark relative to the sector for most organizations, but we do have some organizations we work with that say, look, I sit in the consumer industry, but compare me relative to technology. Right? Because we are starting to implement tech transformation. We want to know how we're doing relative to tech. And so being purposeful around that comparison helps to define where there are strengths and gaps and what the organization can do to be more successful.
So the question I had, Kate, as you were describing it, it sounds incredibly strategic and well thought out. How do you make it sticky in the organization? How do you keep this from being a 6-month or 1-year initiative where then somebody goes, we're not seeing an immediate return on this investment, so we're going to sunset this trust concept, the trust idea, and go back to business as usual?
Well, I would say organizations can't afford not to make it sticky, right? Trust is like health for the organization. And all of us go to the doctor once a year because we want to understand how we're doing, how we're performing. We want to anticipate health challenges before they arise. So I think it's incumbent for organizations to make it a priority and to take that same level of commitment that all of us devote to our own health to say, let us look at the health of the business. Let us do it in a systematic way, in a way where we can track trends over time, track performance over time, and understand whether the initiatives that we are implementing are moving the needle. Right? It's not only a way to identify strengths and gaps, but it's a way to identify how effective the organization is being and if it's making investments in the right areas.
So how do you scale something like that? How do you find the appropriate scale? You guys work with organizations across the entire business sector, right? So, how do you scale something like this so that I'm not buying a size 12 shoe if I wear a size 9?
Well, I think there's two elements of your question. One is how do you scale and gain broad adoption within the organization? The other one is how do you make it relevant to the business, right? So I'll start with the second piece first. In order to make trust and this topic relevant to the business, there are a number of factors that organizations should consider. The first is, who are my key stakeholders, right? Customers, workforce, shareholders, regulators, ecosystem partners, right? Technology vendors, mapping out that ecosystem and understanding what is the trust level with each one? Where are their points of tension? Where are their gaps? And where do we want to be? So I think that helps with the tailoring portion. In terms of scaling, it does take the buy-in, the ownership and leadership of the entire C-suite. So when an organization evaluates trust, it helps to align the organization around the language, the metrics, the processes, so that together the executive can make the right decisions about the business to take it forward.
Yeah, fascinating. Fascinating. I'm sorry, Susan, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just listening to this has been fascinating. And one of the things that strikes me is really how kind of custom or unique that the use of the framework, what trust, what that program looks like for a company. So I was going to ask you if there's one thing that you could recommend, but I don't think that's it. So maybe my question is, you've mentioned these 18 domains that you work with. Are there some that you're seeing are more prevalent, or some that seem to have greater impact? And then what do you see for the future is going to really kind of pop up?
Yeah, Susan, that's a great question. And there are some differences across industries when we look at the 18 and where there are strengths, where there are challenges. What I will tell you is that when we compare all industries, right, and we look at the business community as a whole, the challenges that we are seeing seem to circle around a couple of topics. One of them is sustainability, right? How do we make the right investments on sustainability, demonstrate progress, have the right data and measurement behind it? So that's one challenge. A number of organizations are struggling with diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. That continues to be a priority. And then the third topic that we are seeing come up quite a bit these days is around artificial intelligence. We are living through this transformation where AI and generative AI enables to be productive in entirely new ways. But it also raises questions about how were the models trained? What is the output that they're producing? What is the impact that they're having on the business? And so a lot of organizations are starting to establish governance processes to manage the application of AI, and thinking about this from a regulatory and compliance perspective, but also a strategic perspective. So I would say those are some of the common themes that we've seen.
And do you see the AI piece not only being an internal concern about managing it, using it well, but also from the consumer side going, a trust issue? How is the company going to use it? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to jobs? What is it, those kinds of things?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that the organization also has to pay attention to, because there could be opportunities to leverage AI, but it has to be transparent with its stakeholders, right? So that when you're interacting with a brand or with a business, you know when you're speaking to a human or when you're speaking to a technology. So it takes that holistic approach to think about what is the customer experience that we want to create, what is the workforce experience that we need to create, and then what's the foundation to make sure that we do that in the right way? How do we bring together all of our data across silos? How do we make sure that we're using that data in ways that complies with data privacy concerns, with regulations, with stakeholder expectations around transparency, so that we can not only trust the output of the AI, but we can trust the process that has gone into designing it and the impact that it's having on people.
Yeah, you mentioned the three that you say pop up from the food industry side. Do you feel like those are the same three, or do you feel like you see different three pop up more often?
I would say it's common in the food industry as well. The three that I mentioned tend to cluster near the bottom. We're actually going through a process right now of refreshing our benchmarking data set for 2024. So we'll have in the coming weeks and months new data available for the food industry specifically to be able to see what's changed over the last couple of years. I will tell you that in the consumer industry more broadly, supply chain resilience has also been one of the top concerns, especially with all of the disruption that we've seen after the pandemic, after some of the geopolitical uncertainty that we have had. And so organizations and executives are concerned about supply chains being disrupted in the next, 12 months, 24 months as well. So they're starting to invest in digital, they're starting to invest in scope 3 visibility, and take a concerted effort to look at where they have sources of vulnerability, whether it's from a third party or from their own operations.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. We could do another 30 minutes just on the impact of AI on trust. I think that would be
Or
yeah.
last week's Microsoft situation in Delta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Wow. Kate, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope you'll stick around for the quiz, which tends to be a lot of fun. So now that we've talked about some of the more challenging, every time I talk to you, I scratch my head and go, wow, I hadn't thought about that. So it's always very interesting. So we're thrilled that you were able to join us today. Kevin, what are we talking about today? What is our quiz?
So our quiz today is about classic food and beverage advertising. So what has like so I apologize that if you're a very young Gen Z, some of these you may not even remember, but for the rest of us, we all remember these. So questions about classic, mostly commercial, but food and bev advertising. So
cool.
All right.
Can we sing? Because there were a lot of jingles.
Yes, there's a lot of jingles.
I miss jingles.
Please don't.
There is a lot of jingles, but yes. Sing quietly and
Okay. All right,
I'll join along. All right.
Yeah.
Question 1. 40 years ago, and it is literally 40 years ago this year, Wendy's made a now iconic commercial where 82-year-old Clara Peller asked, "Where's the beef?" regarding the rival's hamburger. What was Clara's unique background? So was she A, born in Imperial Russia and settled in the US as a manicurist? Was she B, the second cousin to Roy Kroc, the founder of McDonald's? C, she grew up in a circus as an announcer and a performer? Or D, she was working craft services on the commercial shoot and was a last-minute add-in?
I'm going to go A.
Okay.
I'm going to go D.
D. Okay.
I'm going to agree with Charlie. I will go with A.
Okay, Charlie and Kate are correct. She was born in Tsarist Russia, basically, and settled for 40 years in Chicago as a manicurist, and actually worked on film sets and was convinced by the crew to join the guild and become an actor. So she was 80 when she became an actor. So
I knew she couldn't have done craft services because she was so hard of hearing that when it was time for her to deliver the lines, somebody was below the counter and they would pull on her skirt or leg or something to tell her, now's the time to deliver the line. Absolutely.
I got thrown off by the Russian thing because they also did a series of do you remember the Wendy's Russian fashion show?
Oh,
and it was the same outfit, no matter, it was the same.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
The same gray dress, swimwear, the same.
Yeah, Soviet Russia.
Don't remember that one.
Yeah.
You don't remember that one?
Number 2, Susan may have a leg up here. All right. Number 2, according to a study at the University of Michigan, using a licking machine, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? Is it A, 123, B, 245, C, 377, or D, 411?
I'm going 123.
123. Susan's locking it in.
I'm locking it.
I love that somebody studied that. I think my son would have loved to sign up for that study. I'm going to go with B.
B, 245. Charlie?
I'm going to go with the 377.
All right. You're all incorrect. I'm sorry. You are, did anyone say D? Who said D? No one said D.
No one said D.
No one said D.
What was that number?
411.
No, we didn't go big.
411?
411. According to a chemical engineering.
That's a lazy lick. If you've got to take 411 licks, that's a lazy lick.
A chemical engineering doctorate student at the University of Michigan recorded using a customized licking machine that it took 411 licks. However, I have to give the caveat that other studies using humans have recorded different numbers. But according to the licking machine and the University of Michigan, which is a good university, that's the number. All right.
Thank you, Kevin. But I think nobody eats the whole thing by only licking it.
No, nobody gets all of it.
I mean, this is,
close.
The real question should be, what is the average amount of licks before you just crunch it?
Right.
That's the real thing.
That's a different story. That's a different.
Also, I think it's skewed because of the owl. Owls would crunch right through. I don't buy that they would lick it.
Yeah, I mean, they eat things and have bones.
Right,
bones.
exactly.
Yeah.
All right. All right, number 3. Which now famous director directed the first Got Milk commercial titled Aaron Burr in 1993? Was it A, Christopher Nolan, B, Michael Bay, C, Wes Anderson, or D, Quentin Tarantino?
Wow. I got to go Quentin Tarantino.
I'm going to go Wes Anderson just because it would be so bizarre.
It would be.
Kate?
I'm going to go with B.
B or D? I'm sorry.
B.
B, Michael Bay. You are correct. It is Michael Bay.
There we go.
Michael Bay, who is known for high energy hits like Bad Boys and The Rock and the Transformers entire franchise. He directed that.
Got Milk.
The first episode,
Yeah.
The Got Milk, first one ever.
That's
All right.
definitely Kate's genre.
All right. Kate is up, I believe, because I believe she is up. All right.
Yeah, she is.
Next one. In 1965, Pillsbury introduced the Pillsbury Doughboy, aka Poppin' Fresh, also his name, to the world. While Poppin' Fresh is iconic, less well known is his family. He had a whole family. What is the name of the Pillsbury Doughboy's daughter? Is it A, Dumpling, B, Muffin, C, Bun Bun, or D, Patty?
Bun.
I
Susan's
had no idea there was even a family, but I'm going to have to go with
didn't either.
Dumpling.
Yeah.
Dumpling. Susan, you said Bun Bun.
Yep. I'm
Bun
gonna go with Bun Bun because Bun Bun.
Charlie and Susan, you are correct. It is Bun Bun. Poppin' Fresh also had a partner named Poppy, Grandmommer and Grandpopper, Uncle Rolly, a son named Popper, and a dog and cat named Flapjack and Biscuit.
Oh,
Of course he did.
So I believe there's a tie now, Charlie and Kate.
I think it's a three-way tie. Or no, just
Is it?
no,
Okay,
I've
I
only
know.
gotten one correct.
All right,
Okay.
last one.
Yeah.
The Kool-Aid Man has been smashing down walls since 1975. Since
Oh,
that
yeah.
time, that's right. You did that way too well, Charlie. Since that time, internet sleuths have been very busy attempting to understand this giant pitcher with legs. Based on a height that people have figured out is 6 foot tall and the physics needed to break through a brick wall unscathed, the Kool-Aid Man is estimated to weigh which of the following? Note, this is pitcher plus Kool-Aid.
Oh, pitcher plus Kool-Aid.
Yes,
I feel
people
there's
have
a lot of
and the
math.
pitcher's
A
full.
lot of
The
math.
pitcher's full.
Pitcher
of
is
Kool-Aid.
full. Pitcher's
Pitcher
full.
is full.
Full pitcher.
Yes, pitcher's
Okay.
full.
Well, that
Is it
changes it a lot.
1,200 pounds, 3,000 pounds, 6,500 pounds, or 11,000 pounds?
I'm gonna go 6,500.
6,500. Locked
I'm
in.
going with C.
Say that again. I'm sorry, Kate.
I'm going with C.
C, 6,500. So
I was going to go there, but I'm going to go heavy. I'm going to go 11. D.
Susan is correct. It is D. This
Oh.
assumes the pitcher will weigh 5,800 pounds and 607 gallons
Wow.
of Kool-Aid, which is 5,200
8
pounds.
pounds a gallon. Yeah.
Right. So
Okay.
that's according to a website called Vsauce, a common popular YouTube. They did the physics of it and everything. The other thing I have to note that there is a existential debate about whether the Kool-Aid Man is the pitcher or the contents of the pitcher or the combination. The consensus is he is the pitcher and he can change any liquid. But I just had to
Oh.
deep
Change is
thought.
always possible. It's just
Deep
never
thought.
likely.
That's right.
Well,
Okay.
that's kind of mind blowing. We can discuss that later.
I think we tied. I think we tied.
Yeah, I think we did. So
I have
too
a
much-
tiebreaker in case anyone wants it. I don't know if we
Yeah,
have
let's
time.
do it. Let's do it. No more
All right.
existential questions, though.
Tiebreaker. Which classic jingle was revealed to be used by the CIA as part of their enhanced interrogation technique? Is it Give Me a Break by Kit Kat, 2 All Beef Patties by McDonald's, the Meow Mix jingle, or I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing?
I'd like to teach the world to sing without question.
Meow
Charlie?
mix.
Meow Mix?
I'm going to go with Meow Mix as well.
Okay, it's Meow Mix.
Oh.
So according to
Meow,
a
meow, meow,
deep
meow.
investigation, it was along with Barney and Friends and
Oh,
Metallica's Enter Sandman. All of those have been
Enter
used.
Sandman.
Yeah, but I can definitely see Barney and Friends.
Yeah, I can see that too.
All right, I
can
think
see that too.
Charlie, I think it's Susan and Kate. Susan?
It is. Congratulations to the two of you, and thank you for joining us on this edition of 3Squares. Now, I do want to foreshadow our upcoming series on climate change. Now, before you decide you want to not listen because that's boring and depressing, we're going to be taking several different looks at it that will neither be boring nor depressing. So we invite you to join us for the next several months as we explore climate change, the various knock-on effects, and some of the exciting things that different entities across the food system are doing to adapt, become more resilient, and innovate. So join us again next month on 3Squares. Again, you can find us at 3squaresmail@gmail.com, the numeral 3squaresmail@gmail.com. Kate Graeff, thank you so much again for your excellent insight on trust. We look forward to having you back at some point in the future, and I will continue to follow your outstanding work. Kevin, Susan, have a great weekend, and thanks again for listening, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.